It is a joy to continue proclaiming the message of truth. Welcome and thank you so much for joining me today. Let us continue reading this book by Uriah Smith. Thoughts on Daniel and Revelation, 1897, January 10, 2024. Before I share with you today's message, I would like to invite you for a word of prayer. Let us indeed seek the Lord in prayer. Our Father in heaven, there is no other way to you except to believe and to accept Jesus as your literal Son and reject all errors and not be beholden to any authority, any ecclesiastical creed, but the Bible and the Bible alone, your word. Father, guide us into all truth. I pray in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Daniel chapter 7, verses 23-26. This is now the third part of our reading. Page 129, the last paragraph of this page. Odoacer, the leader of the Reedley, was the first of the barbarians who reigned over the Romans. He took the throne of Italy according to Gibbon, Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, Volume 3, pages 510, 515, in 476. Of his religious belief, Gibbon, page 516, says, like the rest of the barbarians, he had been instructed in the Arian heresy, but he revered the monastic and episcopal characters, and the silence of the Catholic attests the toleration with which they enjoy. Again, he says in page 547, the Ostrogoths, the Burgundians, the Suevi, and the Vandals who had listened to the eloquence of the Latin clergy preferred the more intelligible lessons of their domestic teachers. And Arianism was adopted as the national faith of the warlike converts who were seated on the ruins of the Western Empire. This irreconcilable difference of religion was a perpetual source of jealousy and hatred, and the reproach of barbarian was embittered by the more odious epithet of heretic. The heroes of the North, who had submitted with some reluctance to believe that all their ancestors were in hell, were astonished and exasperated to learn that they themselves had only changed the mode of their eternal condemnation. The reader is requested to consider carefully a few more historical statements which throw some light on the situation at this time. Stanley, History of the Eastern Church, page 151, says, the whole of the vast Gothic population which descended in the Roman Empire, so far as it was Christian at all, held to the faith of the Alexandrian heretic. Our first Teutonic version of the scriptures was by an Arian missionary, Ulfilas, the first conqueror of Rome. Alaric and the first conqueror of Africa, Genseric, were Arians. Childeric, the great king of Italy and hero of the Nibelungian line, was an Arian. The vacant place in his massive throne at Ravenna is a witness of the vengeance which the Orthodox took on his memory. When in their triumph, they tore down the porphyry vase in which his Arian subjects had enshrined his ashes. Ranke, in his History of the Popes, London edition of 1871, volume 1, page 9, says, but she, referring to the church, fell, as was inevitable, into many embarrassments and found herself in an entirely altered condition. A pagan people took possession of Britain. Arian kings seized the greater part of the remaining West, while the Lombards, long attached to Arianism and as neighbors most dangerous and hostile, established a powerful sovereignty before the very gates of Rome. The Roman bishops, meanwhile, beset on all sides, exerted themselves with all the prudence and pertinacity with which had remained their peculiar attributes to regain the mastery, at least in their patriarchal diocese. Machiavelli, in his History of Florence, page 14, says nearly all the wars which the northern barbarians carried on in Italy, it may be here remarked, were occasioned by the pontiffs, and the hordes with which the country was inundated were generally called in by them. These extracts give us a general view of the state of affairs at this time and show us that though the hands of the Roman pontiffs might not be visibly manifest in the movements upon the political board, they constituted the power working assiduously behind the scenes to secure their own purposes. The relation which this Arian king sustained to the Pope, from which we can see the necessity of their being overthrown to make way for papal supremacy, is shown in the following testimony from Moshaim, given in his History of the Church, Century 6, Part 2, Chapter 2, Section 2. On the other hand, it is certain from a variety of the most authentic records that both the emperors and the nations in general were far from being disposed to bear with patience the yoke of servitude which the popes were imposing upon the Christian church. The Gothic princes set bounds to the power of those arrogant prelates in Italy, permitted none to be raised to the pontificate without their approbation, and reserved to themselves the right of judging on the legality of every new election. An instance in proof of this statement occurs in the history of Odoacer, the first Arian king, above mentioned as related by Bauer in his History of the Popes, Volume 1, page 271. When on the death of Pope Simplicius, AD 483, the clergy and people had assembled for the election of a new pope, suddenly Baezelius, Prefectus Praetorio, the lieutenant of King Odoacer, appeared in the assembly, expressed his surprise that any such work as appointing a successor to the deceased pope should be undertaken without him. In the name of the king, declared all that had been done null and void, and ordered the election to begin anew. Certainly, the horn which exercised such a restrictive power of the papal pontiff must be taken away before the pope could reach the predicted supremacy. Meanwhile, Zeno, the emperor of the East and friend of the pope, was anxious to drive Odoacer out of Italy. Machiavelli, page 6. A movement which he soon had the satisfaction of seeing accomplished without trouble to himself in the following manner. Theodoric had come to the throne of the Ostrogothic kingdom in Moesia and Pannonia. Being on friendly terms with Zeno, he wrote him, stating that it was impossible for him to restrain his Goths within the impoverished province of Pannonia, and asking his permission to lead them to some more favorable region, which they might conquer and possess. Zeno gave him permission to march against Odoacer and take possession of Italy. Accordingly, after a 3 years' war, the Heraclean kingdom in Italy was overthrown. Odoacer was treacherously slain, and Theodoric established his Ostrogoths in the Italian peninsula. As already stated, he was an Arian, and the law of Odoacer, subjecting the election of the Pope to the approval of the king, was still retained. The following incident will show how completely the papacy was in subjection in his power. The Catholics in the East, having commenced the persecution against the Arians in 523, Theodoric summoned Pope John into his presence and thus addressed him, "If the emperor," referring to Justin, the predecessor of Justinian, "does not think fit to revoke the edict which he has lately issued against those of my persuasion, that is, the Arians, it is my firm resolution to issue the like edict against those of his, that is, the Catholics, and to see it everywhere executed with the same rigor. Those who do not profess the faith of Nicaea are heretics to him, and those who do are heretics to me. Whatever can justify his severity to the former will excuse and justify mine to the latter." But the emperor continued the king, "has none about him who dare freely and openly speak what they think, or to whom he would hearken if they see. But the great veneration which he professes for your see leaves no room to doubt but he would hearken to you. I will therefore have you to repair forthwith to Constantinople, there to remonstrate, both in my name and your own, against the violent measures in which the court has so rashly engaged. It is in your power to divert the emperor from them until you have, nay, till the Catholics," this name Theodoric applies to the Arians, are restored to the free exercise of their religion and to all the churches from which they had been driven, you must not think of returning to Italy. Bauer's History of the Popes, Volume 1, page 325. We will read the next comments the next time. May God our Father continue to bless you and His only begotten divine Son, Jesus Christ, be gracious to you now and forevermore. Amen.